either way, it doesn't matter because this is just who we are, and we're not going to like change our way because the times or technology is different. It's like if people are going to like it, they're going to like it, and there's a lot of people out there that probably listen to it for the first time and aren't interested in it, don't get it, and just maybe don't revisit it ever. And those people that are doing that, a lot of those people are probably missing out on something that could be really special in their life. Not saying that our stuff is so amazing, but the fact is that to be nonchalant about our music and maybe just give it that one listen and move on is just not, you're not getting the whole picture that way. You're not really understanding it.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to episode 193 of Into the Necrosphere. This week, I am visiting with Chuck Sherwood and John McEntee of the legendary death metal band Incantation. We are talking about their brand new record, Unholy Deification, why they sound rejuvenated in 2023, some of the ups and downs they have experienced over the course of a 3-decade-plus career, and much, much more. It is coming your way very shortly, but before we get to that, a long-time member of the Legion, Ian Guest, reached out to me recently to let me know about a new project he's involved in called Grief Prison. They have an album in the works called And So We Carry On. I've had a taste of it, I liked it, and I believe that you all will like it also. So for your listening pleasure, this is Grief Prison with Sadist in Denial. You just listened to Sadist in Denial by Grief Prison off the upcoming album And So We Carry On. No word yet on who may release this. I believe this may be the first time that the song has been featured, or this band has been featured on a podcast. But either way, we have been the first to break many bands on Into the Necrosphere, and like I said, I absolutely love this. So I don't believe that Grief Prison are on Bandcamp just yet, but I will post a link to their Instagram in the description to the podcast. Go follow them, and I'm sure when they are close to releasing the record in full, you may get yourself a taste of something on their Bandcamp. So yeah, do that. My friends, if you're new to the podcast and you like what you hear, then grab the nearest folding chair and smack the subscribe button on your platform of choice until it begs you for mercy. Follow me on Instagram, X, and Facebook. And if you really want to show your love and support for the podcast, then head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store and pick yourself out a t-shirt or a hoodie or any of the other fashion-forward merchandise on offer there. Also, make sure that you are following my fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Every Monday, we kick off with Brandon Legion, who interviews writers, producers, actors, and others working in the horror genre with his bi-weekly podcast, Horrible 666. Every Tuesday, yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere. Every Wednesday, my good friend Sensei Mike Hill brings you his long-running smorgasbord of sinister variety. Everything went black. Every Thursday, he returns with one of my favorite podcasts of the week, Necromaniacs, alongside Sheriff Mike Scandato and Professor Jeff Kashid. They review old and new horror movies. On a Sunday, the Reverend Carl Haikara brings you a deep dive into the weird, the arcane, the dark, and the esoteric with his weekly podcast, Soul Knocks, and then skulking in the shadows, ready to pounce when you least expect it, is my good friend Cheyenne and his podcast, Iblis Manifestations. Make sure you stick around after my conversation with Chuck and John, because I am going to be doing a countdown of my 6 favorite Marduk records, along with reviewing their new album, Memento Mori. And then it's on to my weekly news rant, where new singles by For A Cowboy, Afterbirth, Wolves in the Throne Room, and more will be rounded up for judgment. We're also going to talk a little bit about the latest events to transpire in the Till Lindemann of Rammstein saga, and much more. Not for the faint of heart, but therefore I know that everybody who's listening to this already is fired up and ready to go. So sit back and enjoy as I welcome to the podcast the gentleman from Incantation. How are you two both doing? How are you feeling on the eve of the release of the new record? As we're recording this, we're literally hours away now.
Yes, exactly that. Very excited. It's a long time coming.
Yeah, definitely feeling good, and just it's always an exciting time to release a new album, and we're extra happy with the way this one came out. So I guess I'm even extra excited.
There's definitely I feel like there's a lot more energy and a lot more anticipation around this record than I can recall there being for Incantation in a while. And I mean, I'll take you back to how long I've been a fan of this band. I think the first time I heard Incantation was on an old Relapse compilation called Corporate Death. And that was, ages ago. And, we'll talk a little bit about just kind of the early days of the band in a bit. But, I remember the band sounding so different, so unique, especially for the time. And you guys have sort of forged your own path ever since. But I've felt in some ways, maybe because you guys were so different, that you seem to have sort of walked a path of your own rather than kind of gone with the trends or anything like that. Mm-hmm. To me, with Unholy Deification, the sense I get when I look at the socials, when I look at just generally speaking, comments to things I've already shared about the record on my show, people really seem excited about this. I kind of feel like this is almost the way that there was this, increase in excitement for the last Immolation record. I feel like you guys are sort of getting your dues now in a way that I haven't seen for a while.
Well, I mean, it's definitely nice that we're getting, a lot of anticipation exposure. I think, it's hard for me to say because I'm so close to the album, but I think that this album is really a Incantation album for Incantation fans. It's it has all the important aspects I think that make Incantation and the overall just sound of it. It just has that raw edge to it. It's a more of a darker underground barbaric sounding album than the Sect of Vile Divinities album, which is something that we feel very comfortable in this space that we're in right now. And just between the vibe of the band and the fire that the band has at the moment, I think got captured on the album great, which is, for me at least, it's a extra proud representation because always my favorite releases are the ones where I just feel the energy and the power and the talent of all the people that are in the band on it, and just when we have the right focus. And this one just happened to be like a special moment in our career. The writing process was great. The band is just we're all vibing together and friends. It's just a great vibe. But and I think it comes across either when we're playing live or whatever we're doing. I think when you're just feeling this fucking excited and this much energy and this much power, it just I think it comes across to everybody because we're all very proud of this release.
Mm. What do you think made this one different in particular? And I mean, you've been up and down the road for some time now. I mean, I think a lot of folks that listen to this might not realize Incantation, your official the official year you're listed as having started is 1989, which I was 9 years old at the time. So it's 34 years ago, which is fucking mind blowing.
Yes. Well, the thing that makes it special is the connection that we all have in the band. It's the chemistry. It just felt good from day one of working on these songs. It just the whole process was just a great, real team effort on the album on all aspects. So that's what makes it really, really special for me because I want to work with people that are excited to work for stuff and have the same ideas musically that I do. And the band is in that space now where we're all focused on same or similar goal, and we all have different aspects that we could bring to the writing process to really help things out and make things better. And just everyone's contributions that we've been having on this album especially has just made it, everybody's contribution made the songs better and stuff. So there's just a great vibe, and that's what makes a great album for me, because I don't just look at it for songs and the album. I look at the whole process of making it. To me, is all part of it, and like we've had it in the past, say with Onward to Golgotha, with Vanquish and Vengeance, even Blasphemy was a very liberating album for me. I mean, it's just, for me, it's just the overall band connection or whatnot, which makes it great.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with all that, because when it comes to like the elements that were in Vanquish and Vengeance and how we had the writing process and how organic it was and fluid it was, we're seeing that renewed with this lineup. With the advent of having Luke involved in everything, his contributions and his solo work and his prowess and talent is just definitely something to take notice of, especially on this release. He had some contributions in the previous with Sect of Vile Divinities, but in this one he really shines. And the song in particular, Megaron, was primarily his writing, and that was presented in such a way to where we didn't have much to add to it except for our own performances that again add our own flavor, but we didn't necessarily have to do anything like reconstructing. And when it comes to these songs for this album, we were met with the pandemic and stuff for 2020 with Sect of Vile Divinities. With this one, we had a lot of time and abilities to rewrite or re-edit, and it wasn't even necessary. Like, we were able to put these things together sometimes in a matter of minutes, or perhaps like maybe go back into them and dig a little bit, but it was very, very easy. And it's because of the nature of who we are, and the influences that we have, and the approach that we take to writing, and that kind of camaraderie, friendship, bandmate situation is something that it really shines through on this release. So yeah, I'd have to agree with John. It's a very important one, and however it's perceived, positively or negatively, we feel very strongly about this release, and it was an amazing time in its creation. So now is the time to see what happens.
And really, with any album, it's really important that we feel comfortable, we stand behind it. That's what's important. I mean, of course, it's nice that other people like it and people are excited about it, but we have to feel it. We have to know that it's something we're proud of. So, looking at it that way, that's we feel very confident with what we did, and I think, like I said, we don't know if the masses are going to like it or not, but I think people that really understand the style of Incantation and know what where we're coming from, will really appreciate it and like it a lot. And then, like anything we do, it sometimes takes people a while to understand it or get into the vibe. We're not one of those bands that necessarily you listen to the first time and you get 100%. I'm not saying we're anything like Voivod, but it's like a Voivod kind of band where you might listen to it at first, be like, what the hell is this? And then once you understand it, it's like, oh, yes, this is really something special, something different, So it's, and I don't know if we necessarily like wanted to be that kind of band, but it's just us being ourselves, because we want to write the music we want to write. We want to write it for ourselves. And if other people like it, that's great. And if they don't like it, that's fine too. I mean, we know getting into this that we're not crowd pleasing.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that the fact that everything isn't so obvious with you guys, that it takes time, in almost sort of investment of your time to get the most out of every album. I think that's part of what's made you so enduring. And again, I think it's also, whenever I think of, and it might be because I discovered you both around the same time, but it might be the parallels I draw between you and Immolation. It's thinking man's death metal, I think, is how best to describe it. It's not something it's not empty calories. You don't just listen to it, go, yeah, that's cool, that's brutal, and then maybe 6 months down the road you sort of you've worn out that record and you've moved on to the next thing. There's layers beneath what you hear at first, second listen on any Incantation record, and I think that's been the case pretty much since the very early releases.
Well, I think I think you're right with that. I mean, it's just the way it's always been for us. I don't know if that's a negative in this environment, because music is so cheap and a lot of people listen to things very nonchalantly. I know for myself, when I was younger, there was a lot of releases that I didn't get the first time I listened to, and I needed that time to nourish properly for me to understand and enjoy it, and then it becomes like a huge part of my life. And now I think that has been taken away a little bit with music being free and being able to listen to anything. It's like, if you don't like it from the beginning, you just move on now. So that actually could be a negative in our situation, unless you're a real diehard, death metal fan that likes to really, dig deep into, band's album or discography or something like that. So either way, it doesn't matter, because this is just who we are, and we're not going to like change our way because the times or technology is different. It's like, if people are going to like it, they're going to like it. And there's a lot of people out there that probably listen to it for the first time and aren't interested in it, don't get it, and just maybe don't revisit it ever. And those people that are doing that, a lot of those people are probably missing out on something that could be really special in our life. Not saying that our stuff is so amazing, but the fact is that to be nonchalant about our music and maybe just give it that one listen and move on is just not, you're not getting the whole picture that way. You're not really understanding it. It's just like when we're told we have to release a couple songs before the release of the album. It's like it's very difficult to make those decisions because, you know, it's like no one song on the album represents the whole album necessarily. So it's very difficult to get a true feeling of the album until you listen to the whole album and you listen to it either in front of the stereo, like headbanging to it, or maybe zoning out, just absorbing the vibe. It's just the way that our stuff was meant. We're from a time in music where the album is an important thing, the whole album. It's not just a few songs. The whole journey of each album is its own little journey and needs to be experienced in its full to be proper for us. But we also realize that that's not the way people listen to music anymore. So obviously they, you know, I will take however they like it is fine with me. But I think you really need to sit down and give it a few good listens to really chomp on the what we're really trying to express on the album.
I mean, for this quick digesting world in which we are, and it's like the attention spans are almost nil. That you can put out the songs and people will either embrace it or ignore it. But when it comes to like our fan base right now, we're finding folks that have surfaced that are much younger, and they're only familiar with perhaps like Sect of Wild Divinities, and that's a testament to actually their attention. Like they were willing to give it a chance, and this one, it forces them even more so because of the nature of how we presented these songs and this whole full concept idea. So now you can listen to it in smatterings or particular songs, but the intent is for you to listen to it in its entirety.
Yeah.
Well, we also provided a secondary option for you to almost like read along with it as well, hence the Roman numerals. The one being that, the numbers are out of order because that's what the music demanded of it. But then for those that actually want to dig deeper, deeper than even they are now, like it's imposing a lot on folks. But the thing is that, it's what we wanted out of it. And I think that, if people do, take the time, they might find that they appreciate it in two ways. And, that's something more than, what most would do.
And the Roman numerals being out of order, it's we're not Rush, we're not these Pink Floyd, these big bands that can really come up with a start to finish thing like that. We're not trying to pretend to be, but the lyrics do have a full theme throughout the song, throughout the album, being a concept. So we wanted to make it flow the proper way musically that we felt, but also make sure that people know that this is actually a concept and you could listen to it in another way and get a whole nother vibe from the album. But we're not arrogant enough to think like, well, we have to do it in the order of the lyrics. As long as we let people know what the order is, they can choose for themselves how they want to digest it, Yeah,
I mean, we're not a prog rock band. This isn't like the attempt of 2112. Do you know what I mean? It's just take what you want from it. You know what I mean? But to listen to it in its entirety, whichever version you choose, that takes a little bit of time and devotion to the album as a whole, as opposed to the individual songs. So
Well, we realize some people are gonna be interested in digging deeper, and some people aren't. And either way is totally fine. I mean, at the end of the day, really, if anybody even likes one song that any of us ever wrote, that's a win, because you don't expect people to like it. You can't expect people to be as close or as indulgent in the album as we're going to be, necessarily. But if they are, that's great.
You touched on something earlier around change in listening behavior, and you having been doing this for a period of time now, I'm curious as to when you think, or around about what time you think that change started occurring. I've made this argument on the podcast many times before. You guys won't have heard it, so I'll repeat it for your benefit. But the people that listen to the show know this, or know my opinion on this. I think that people began to. I think they began to undervalue music, or at least the relationship to music and to art changed when they no longer needed to take cash out of their wallet and hand it to somebody at the other end of a counter and get a physical product. I think as soon as that happened, what I started to notice was a immediate drop in energy at shows. I mean, you can argue that the average age at the shows increased as well. And when you're 45 years old, you're not necessarily going to pit as hard as you were when you're 23. But definitely, to me, if I had to try to pinpoint where that relationship changed, where people's value perception of music and art in general changed, it's when they were able to get so much of it in abundance and pretty much for free. But I'm keen to get your take on that. As somebody who's been doing this for you were doing it back when people were absolutely obsessed with it. I mean, I remember being young, and if I got an album, whether it was Covenant, or whether it was the first, second Deicide record, you would literally listen to that album until your ears bled, pour through every lyric, the liner notes you would read. You'd almost remember by heart the people that they thanked, even if you didn't know who they were. And I mean, those days are definitely gone.
Yeah, they are. But I know exactly how you feel. I mean, I remember those 3 albums in particular. Like, I was obsessed by those. I'm 45 myself too, man. So I've been there. To actually put the crux point as being actual cash currency, I don't know. I mean, you may very well be right. I just know that certainly no one cares about how much time, effort, or anything you put towards anything. They care about what car you drive, what kind of job you have, what kind of education you have, what kind of shoes you wear. Like, those are the things that are of value in society and everything. When you give them an album, they don't care. They're like, oh, yeah, I can get that on YouTube for free. Why pay for it? Or I can just get a membership and somebody submits it from Bischoff Schwerta and it ends up on their membership archive or something. And then they say, oh, well, don't worry about licensing because we charge memberships. And it's not just the money aspect of it. It's the accessibility aspect of it. So you can find like the most rarest, most obscure, weird demo, but the entire world knows it. Yeah, they all know it. It's not weird and obscure. It's not special anymore. It's just, yeah, everybody's got it. These kind of things are unavoidable, and it's not going to really get any better except for those that treat this for nostalgia purposes. I mean, cassettes are popular right now. That's impressive, but to charge somebody like firsthand, they would sooner buy food than they would an album.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even, doesn't faze them at all.
Yeah. The thing that's at least important for us, I think, is that we still treat it as value of what we do. We look at each song, each release, everything as, something important to us and value, just like we would have looked at it back in, when, music was worth more, because even though it isn't worth as much money, money wise now, it's for us, it still means a lot to us personally. So
yeah, I wasn't trying to say that, like, for our own perspective. I'm not saying that at all to diminish our own perspective. Yes, we still hold a very high value to it. I was just more or less stating the outside popular opinion.
No, absolutely. I know. Again, I know exactly what you mean. It's like you'll jump on Spotify, for example. You'll see an album, and you'll go, it's going to take me, it takes me 3 seconds to find this and listen to 2-3 songs and go, I couldn't be bothered to listen to the rest. And exactly as you just said now, that transaction, rightly or wrongly, it forgoes an appreciation and a comprehension of how much work actually went into it. The few times that I've spent in the studio observing bands, watching bands, I mean, even the shittiest band, there's still a lot of effort that went into that. Not to mention a band that are operating at the level of Incantation, the amount of practice, the amount of takes, retakes, when you're in a studio. I don't actually think I would actually even go as far as to say I don't think the average person that's into metal understands genuinely how much hard work goes into it.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you can, aside from even like the internet-based things, you could be at a physical merch table, and you go $20 for the album, and they go, take 15.
So you have fans trying to haggle with you at shows.
Well, I mean, it happens, but it doesn't, not necessarily like centered just solely on our own experiences, but I mean, in general, like that happens quite often, you know, and then they would turn around and draw up a $200 bar bill.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just the way things are. I mean, I think you started around the time, you know, of Napster and stuff. I mean, that was like the seeds of things going, but at that time, it was like a transition period, so it wasn't, you know, it wasn't so strong. We'll say, you know, the amount of people devaluing music, but it was the first step, I think, to devaluing music, and then just throughout the 2000s, like 2000 to 2010, it just slowly started to get less and less valued, especially once stuff like Napster came out. I mean, it was a little bit different because when people were just trading MP3s, they were still trading something somewhat. It's not physical, but it exists to some extent. Once it started to become just playing it on YouTube or just playing it through Spotify or some of the other streaming services, Amazon, whatever, it just started to make it so you don't actually see anything from it except it's playing. It just exists and it's there and it's for you to enjoy, and it doesn't matter. Nothing matters except the fact that it's there, and then you can enjoy it or pass it up, you know, on the spot kind of thing. It's a weird, for me, it's a very weird way of looking at it, because I notice myself, like, just listening to something, be like, oh, that sucks, I'm not into it, I don't want to listen to it. And if the 15-year-old me wouldn't have done that. I mean, I remember getting the second album, I think it was called, I can't remember, something like Brave New World. It was from Discharge, and it totally changed style from the first one, and I was just horrified by it. But even though I didn't like the album, it took me a lot of listens to come to terms that I didn't like the album. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, okay, I listened to it, it sucked. Like, now I would have, in that same scenario, I would have listened to it and not even bothered listening to the whole album, giving it that chance. But back then, I gave it multiple listens. Okay, I decided I didn't like the album, but it was because I gave that album every single chance possible to enjoy it, understand it, and whatnot. And that's the problem with today, is that, you know, it's not like you get it on Spotify and you're like, you hold it near and dear to your heart and you want to give it, you know, every chance to listen to it or understand it, you know, because some bands are just not, you're just not going to get on the first, you know, first listen. I mean, there are a lot of bands out there these days, a lot of newer bands that are thinking the Spotify way of listening to music, where they're just worried about making crowd pleaser songs and just to hit it right off the bat. And that's their prerogative if they want to do that with their band. But I come from an era where the album was king. The whole piece was, the whole thing was very important. And still to this day, to us, everything from the layout to the lyrics to the vocal patterns to the songs, to the way the songs relate to each other, the way the songs are written. It's not about just trying to do pop music in a death metal form of trying to gain as many casual fans as possible. No, we want people that are going to really, you know, stick with us for a while and maybe really appreciate what we do. And if they don't appreciate what we do, that's fine too. But like I said before, we have to appreciate it. We have to know that we put in the time. We just didn't throw out some garbage for people to just, you know, devour until the next trend comes along.
I mean, you got these people with the AI artwork and everything, and it becomes like cookie cutter situations where, yes, it's AI, but it also looks like it's AI. So then you got 50, covers that look like AI. But then when it really comes down to it, by the time it's on Spotify, it's about the size of a postage stamp. Nobody cares. Well, if you go and hire an artist that puts the time and the devotion, the energy towards it, you have the conceptual ideas, you build upon a color scheme, you create, that piece, and that deserves to be seen. You don't, if it doesn't deserve to be seen, I guess you could just keep on doing AI or just not have covers anymore. It's all of the aspects is, I think, very important, and it's
Yeah, I mean, because it's like that with art. Art, music is art too. So it is AI generated art is just. I mean, it looks nice, but yeah, you start to see like everybody has the same painter doing their album cover. I mean, with Elron Cantor, it's like you're getting, you're seeing his honesty, his actual brushstrokes, the way he's envisioning it. I don't think that AI would come up with our album cover, even if we gave him all the things to explain, because it would have came up with something way more generic, because it would have probably put in the fact that it wants something that is just simple and easy to look at. Ours is more disturbing.
Well, I'm actually just looking at it again now. I mean, it is genuinely stunning. I mean, I think anybody who has seen it, always seen like a big blown up high res version of it. It's disturbing, as you say, but there's genuine beauty to it, and I think you touch on something interesting there as well. There is you can kind of you can see the emotion with which it was done. Which I think is something very special, and again, it's something that AI would never be able to replicate. There's some stuff there's some aspects of AI where I think it could aid in the creative process. It could take some of the drudgery out of the creative process and kind of free you up to be more creative. But at the same time, the one thing that AI can never ever that it can never emulate is genuine, authentic emotions. And how you express that, through music, or you express that through a painting, or through whatever means.
But that's the problem with any kind of technology, is that it all can be used in a positive way to help the situation out, but it ends up getting abused either by people's lack of talent or real interest in art. I mean, let's use the example of the late '90s, when Pro Tools ran rampant in the recording scene, and everybody just decided, well, now I'm just gonna quantize every fucking note in every fucking song that they wrote and come up with this perfect, like, played album that is like almost not human and not realistic to how they actually play, but the album sounds stellar. And the trick worked for a little while, until everything started to sound like the same. Like, all you heard was like these same blazing double kicks, or the same ridiculously fast drum beats. But those same bands you'd watch live and be like, he didn't play that on the album. There's no fucking way that guy played that on the album. And that kind of thing is the same thing that AI is taking away from art and music and even writing. It's like it's taking away because the personality of the musician, for this example, is important. The way the person plays, the fact that they're not playing to a meter and they're playing to their own feeling, and the song's playing to itself. It's a vibe between the 4 people or 5 people, whatever's in your band. Those are the magic moments, not the fact that your feet are played at like 220 beats per minute and whatever. Like, I don't know. When listening to it, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck what beats per minute somebody's playing? It's like, does the song sound good? Does the song mean anything? Those are the things that are important. Not So Big Deal. XYZ is an amazing drummer that can play to a click track at a ridiculous speed. Good for them, But when it really comes down to listening to a song, Do I care about that? I absolutely don't. And that's the things that AI are bringing to music. It's bringing like or to art or anything. It's bringing, say, a sense of almost perfection that is going to start to make things sound bland and take away what music was meant for, is self-expression.
I mean, it doesn't have to be mechanized the way it is. I mean, people were priding themselves on perfection to a level that is just inhuman, you know, and when it could have been originally used as a tool, it becomes, you know, a replacement. You know, now you don't even need a person. You know, you could just click in the machine. And that doesn't benefit anybody. I mean, and at least not in my opinion, because music was, you know, even from its inceptions and stuff, with people just sitting around clicking on rocks and stuff like that, it's the organics of what it is. You know, you flash forward into like different classical, Baroque music, all the way up into what we do nowadays, you know, all the different culminations of influence or however it may be. It meant that it was people getting together and playing. Now you don't need it anymore. You know, oh, you can't play that part? Don't worry about it. The machine will fix it. You know, oh, you can't sing that part? Doesn't matter. The machine will fix it. You know, and I use the example all the time because it's kind of like, it's almost like a pseudo joke. It was like Milli Vanilli back in the day were singing, and then all of a sudden they got booed off stage because they're lip syncing. No one cares about that anymore. You could be up there lip syncing for hours, and they're going to be sitting there crying and freaking out about how amazing you are. It's not music. It's just like playing like a live jukebox. You know, and that kind of people that don't care anymore about it, that is the same mentality in which, you know, you have a postage stamp for an album cover, or, yeah, I own every single album by that band and it cost me, you know, $1. You know, it's, I don't know. I just don't understand.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame, that's all.
Well, officially with Spotify, you just pay your monthly fee and you own every album almost that existed. So,
see, that
but,
that's
you know, what I was going to say is that technology fucked up music pretty good, especially, I mean, look in the pop era. I mean, like most anything that's like commercial music, like, I don't know, hip hop or rap or anything like that, like a majority of it is all done with drum machines and just these perfect timings. It's like set so, you know, people could, you know, all they got to hear is the boom, 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 boom throughout it. And people are like happy with that. And you can't even distinguish artists or bands, or like there's not really like a lot of like this band style, that band style in pop music. It all sounds just like the same regurgitated crap over and over again.
That's been happening for years.
Well, I was about to say, it kind of is the same regurgitated crap, because very often it's written by the same person, or it's written by the same team of people.
Or what about sampling?
Yeah.
They didn't do anything. They just timed it a different way, and voila. I mean, now we have things like mashups. You ever see those? Where they're, you know, like, that's just another form of it. You know, yes, it is impressive that you can use a 4/4 time and match up, I don't know, a disco song to a kazoo solo. You know, like, all that's all well and good, but you know, are they approaching it as if they're creating something new? At least that's still just a joke. But it's only a matter of time before all of a sudden the mashups become part of something else. We don't apply ourselves to anything anymore. No trades are actually admired by any society. You know, if you were like a person that was, I don't know, you build wardrobes, for example, you know, you can go and you build a wardrobe, and then you would teach it to somebody else. You become a mentor, and you have a student, and so on and so forth. And the trade got carried on. Nowadays, we all buy things from, you know, like anything that's mass produced, and it falls apart in a couple months. And who cares? Just buy a new one that's usually outsourced. And all of a sudden, everything that would be an admiration to that one piece of wardrobe is like, oh, aren't you going to get a real job at some point? Like, where did you go to college? Oh, I didn't go to college. Oh, then you're pretty dumb. So the trades are gone, you know, and then you don't even write anymore. Nobody writes for anything. You don't even need electronic signatures for that matter. Nothing to stamp your, you know, your writing skills, and they don't even teach that in school. Like, we are heading to, you know, people don't read. People read memes. You know, it's a sad state of affairs, and music has definitely taken a hit from it too.
Well, it's an interesting thing that you mentioned around trades as well, because the vast majority of people that specialize in a trade, like whether it's plumbing, whether it's carpentry, whether it's being an electrician. They're from generation X, or they're baby boomers, and most of them are going to start retiring. Their spoiled children ended up not following father or mother down into the family business, and we're soon going to find ourselves with a very severe shortage of all of these people, and that's going to be interesting, because it's going to mean, and it's kind of starting to happen here in the UK already. So I know a guy who's an electrician, and he basically works 3 to 4 months out of the year, and then the rest of the time he travels. He goes to Thailand, does Thai boxing, fucks around for a couple of months, comes back, because he says, I basically could just tell people I'm available, and I'll have work until I want to not have work anymore, and then I just go on and I kind of carry on with my life. So it's I think when it comes, I definitely agree with you on the on the fact that the trades are diminishing in terms of the number of people that are doing them. What I would say is the bright note to this, or the silver lining for people that are in the trades, you're going to get your time in the sun in about 10-15 years if you're still around.
I mean, everybody's knows about their car, and they all drive one, but nobody builds them. Machines do that. So it's the same thing for music. If we are sitting here doing things organically together as a group, and getting ideas from one another, and building upon ideas, and especially for this album in particular, that when you do all of that yourself, there's no machines involved. The only machine that might be involved is an interface in order for us to apply ourselves to each respective song, to track to it or something. But we don't use metronomes, we don't use click tracks, we don't do any of that stuff, because the natural organic hesitation of a certain dynamic in a song needs to be through us. It works through cues, it works through, and that gets translated to the stage. So when I guess we're fighting the good fight for it, because technology has its privileges and its joys, but nothing touches just getting together and making metal. It's great.
You're like the plumbers of music.
Exactly.
Yeah, the electricians of music. Well, you guys mentioned earlier how much value Luke has added since he joined the band, and obviously, I was 9 when Incantation got started, but Luke, by my calculations, was 3. So he's considerably...
he was born on the very day that Golgotha came out. He was born on that day. Yeah.
So so statistically, you would imagine that the sort of guys that would fit into Incantation would probably be more, of the seasoned, the seasoned young, or not young, but the seasoned bucks, like the three of us. How did you guys come across him, and what is it about him that has just kind of made him slot in so naturally with the rest of you?
Well, Kyle knew of his band Dismemberment from playing in Columbus, Ohio. They were like one of the bigger local bands in that area, and I think basically Kyle knew Luke's brother Jake, and what better than Luke at the time, and Chuck wasn't able to do some shows at that time because of work, and we asked Jake to help us out on some stuff, and he ended up doing a great job and stuff like that. But then Jake wasn't able to continue working with us because of other commitments he had, and he brought up Luke to try out, and we gave that a whirl, and worked out great. I mean, he did a great job playing bass, filling in, he just was easy to get along with. The whole vibe of playing with Luke was just really, really nice, and nice person to be around. And it's very important, like it's not very common to have, we obviously get along well with Chuck in the band, and stuff. And then we have, sadly, Chuck isn't able to do everything, so we get a replacement. And then the replacement is, just as cool as Chuck is, and works out just as great, which is like an awesome situation to be in, is to have such, great people, to be around and awesome people. I mean, yeah, Luke's, younger metalhead, but, he's really grew up with a lot of the similar stuff that we grew up listening to. And, he's a big fan of the early 90s death metal scene. He, likes a lot of the, 80s heavy metal stuff like that, or the 70s hard rock stuff.
I mean, I always admired like his. Did I just cut you off, dude? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I just admired his application to it as well. Like, it reminded me of myself when I was first joining the band, to where I wanted, to make the albums that were presented to me and the material that I was going to be playing to be as perfect as humanly possible. So I was trying everything to emulate how Ronnie had played, on Golgotha and Mortal Throne, because that was where, when I came in, I had, it was Jim, Craig, and John, and Alex, and myself. So, I'm playing with three members of that lineup of that particular era that I needed, like, in my own head, I needed to be, that perfect replacement. And, when Luke approached it, he took the same approach that I did, where he was like, what are you doing? What are you playing? How are you playing it? And, I would talk with him, numerous times before even the first shows were coming around, giving him tablature and the like and everything to try to, like, get him on a confident level to where he knew he could do it. And the thing is that we all knew he could do it. I mean, if you hear what he does in Dismemberment and everything, his talent and prowess is unbelievable. Like, he's a super talented dude. And when it comes to the bass and everything, he said, for me, it was really difficult and this and that. And I tried, but you succeeded because you did it. And when we switched, when we switched him to guitar, now it is his weapon of choice. And you just saw, like, 1.5 billion different aspects of his playability that we never even experienced prior to. So it made it even more enjoyable, because now, after 5 years of, in and out, being like, it was a shame because, like, whenever he was out, I was home, or vice versa. So then when we finally got together as a unit, we played the 70,000 Tons of Metal show, and we played 2 sets on the cruise, and it was just like, it brought an entirely new life to the live performance. Everything that happened on that stage, like, where you were working off of, like, almost telepathy as opposed to cues and looking at each other, and you didn't even need it. It was really something else, and it actually brought so much so to this new album that it's like, I recall, seeing Jacob, and playing with Asheron and stuff like that. I don't think that I actually bore witness to him when he was playing for those few shows. But ever since Luke's involvement, from whether he was doing the bass and now doing, the lead work and harmonies and writing and everything that he does in this album, it's really something to take note of. I'm repeating myself, but he's awesome.
Yeah, there was a moment for me when we were playing Party Son in 2019, and they wanted, it was like, I think it was like their 25th year anniversary, and they asked each band to play a cover song in the set. So we decided on doing Hell Awaits as our cover song. And we ended up, like, I switched to bass for that song because I was self-conscious about being able to play the song and do those, fast vocals and stuff. And it's a lot of thinking, especially for a song that you're only going to play like one time live or whatever. So, Luke, I gave Luke my guitar and said, okay, for this set, play this when we were practicing. And holy crap, when I heard him play the Hell Awaits, I was just like, oh, wow, this guy's good. Like, this guy's really good. Like, he really, really fit the vibe. It just felt amazing. And as soon as we played that show and he absolutely killed it on guitar, I was just like, well, he's the next guitar player that we have to work with. I mean, it was probably a no-brainer anyway, because of all the time he played on bass and how great of a nice of a dude he was. But once I heard him play guitar, it was just like, as soon as we knew that we're going to have to switch guitar players, I was just like, we have to give Luke this opportunity to do it, because there's something, you could just tell there's something special about his playing. And I've even commented that he really kind of became this band's like Randy Rhoads or something, where
Mm.
he brings in this whole extra magic on top of what that like he makes all of our talent that we have. I know it sounds egotistical saying, but we all have talent in writing stuff, but he brings it to the next level. Like when his contribution to it makes it all pop. And soon as we heard him play for the first time our songs live, like on 70,000 Tons, it's like it was a no brainer. Like I actually was like, we were dumb for not having him, play guitar earlier, because he just brings so much, and brings a whole life to the band that you know wasn't present before. Even though things were really good with the band before, once you hear something even boost to a higher level, you're just like, oh wow, this is like there's just a magic there that we feel when we play with Luke, and it's something that we don't take for granted, and we're just happy that we're able to capture that on album and have other people hear the you know how amazing of a contribution he's making to the band. And I think it's important when any person in the band that's playing in the band, they have to contribute something worthwhile, or
Mm.
why are you there, if you're not contributing. And he's definitely proven his weight as far as contribution goes. What's the term, in spades or whatever. He definitely
Even what he adds to the old songs.
yes.
We reprise like older parts of the discography, and what he adds to it is his own flair and touch to it, but it just makes it sound even better. He outdoes himself. He's a good
Well,
guy.
not a lot of players can integrate himself into the old songs and integrate him into the new songs, and have just as throw in his own. He's able to throw in his own personality, but also keep the integrity of the song, which that in itself is a really big talent, because it's him doing it, but at the same time, you don't feel like, oh, this guitar player is taking away a little bit of the old songs because he wants
Yeah.
to add some of his vibe. And no, he's able to add to it, and you feel like, oh wow, that just expanded upon or made it better or made it more honest or something like that. It's a great feeling. It's a really great. Every time I step on the stage with him to play a live show, I thank my lucky stars to have such an amazing person playing by my side. I mean, I feel that way about everybody in the band, but we're talking about Luke now, and that's it feels great to know that he has it, and knowing that his instinct is going to be the right, is the right thing to do live.
Well, both of you, really come across as feeling genuinely invigorated, and I mean that honestly was my first impressions hearing some of the new material of that you guys are putting out imminently. It sounds like it's an invigorated band. You wouldn't imagine that the band has been around for as long as you've been when you hear this new music, because there's still there's still a hunger from the band there. And I always, this has been a recurring theme on the show, because I have a great amount of admiration for people that have been doing this at a high level for a lengthy period of time, and are still doing it, are still maintaining their creativity, still pushing the boundaries, still putting out relevant, thought-provoking, interesting work. Because I think, again, I suspect a lot of folks underestimate how difficult it is to operate at that level for such a long time consistently. There's, for every Incantation or Immolation or Napalm Death, there's a ton of other bands that we shan't mention that they sound at best like they're trying to recapture something that they just don't know how to do anymore. They just either don't know how to do it, or they just don't have an appetite for it.
A lot of bands at a certain point, they lose their hunger, and they're just doing it because it's the thing to do. It's their bread and butter, but it's fake a lot of times, and
Yeah.
it's sad, because I mean I'm a death metal fan. I want to hear the new album by a band that I love, and I want it to crush. I don't want it to be lame as fuck. But I mean, such a huge amount of bands from the early days. It's very rare for them to put out an album that stands toe to toe with something that they've done, say in the '90s or something like
Yeah.
that. And it's sad. It's sad to hear that. It's a bummer, and bands that are able to still keep that passion. I mean, that's a great thing. And those are the bands that really should be embraced the most, because you're getting honesty and you're getting fire. You're not just getting someone that's trying to regurgitate what they did before, try to copy it, because there's not, there's no fire in that for me to just copy what we did in the past. I mean, and you're talking about a band that people say all the time, we changed too much or we haven't changed enough or whatever. But I mean, most people probably think that we're just doing the same old thing. And it's like, well, you're obviously not listening to it well enough if you think that we're doing the same old thing. Because yes, we're keeping the same core, of course. I mean, that's why it's the fucking band. The band has to have some relation to what it was in the past. But at the same time, you can't expect that the band's going to be 100% exactly what it was 30 years ago, especially with different people in the band. But even with the same people, you can't expect it to be the same exact band. But there has to still be an honest opinion and a feeling and a reason for the band to exist. And the reason for this band to exist is to create new music and to express ourselves, that we still have that fire to do, which we're just fortunate. I mean, I don't know. Some people
now
just
more
get
than
out
ever.
of it. Yeah, some people they just they live off their first album, their first two albums, first three albums, and they just, every new album is just an excuse to tour. And it's like, no, it's not like that for us. I mean, I love all the albums we do hold a special place in my heart. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, I value at the moment, the new album is what I want to, I'm proud of, and it's a expression of the band and where we are now, and I'm proud of that moment, and I want to enjoy it, and I want people to feel what we feel in the band, musically and what we're doing. And of course, there's always going to be nods to where we came from in our music, because that's who we are, because we're the same band.
I was going to say, we're still the same people. It's kind of unavoidable.
Yeah, it's funny because I read in the Tony Iommi book that it's like people either complain that you're too much the same, or they complain that you change too much. Well, of course you sound the same because it's the same band, but at the same time, you do have to expand musically to some extent. I mean, you don't want to just regurgitate the old stuff, but then, and if you do that, people say, oh, you sound too much the same. Otherwise, people say we sound too different. Like, I hear it all the time in reviews of our material, that people say, oh, there's nothing new here. Well, there's nothing new here if you're just looking at it like it's just, another Incantation death metal album. But if you really listen to the album and you know the old stuff well enough, you'll know that there's new stuff involved in it. But at the same time, other people say, well, it doesn't sound exactly like it did back in 1990. Well, of course it doesn't sound like it did in 1990. We went into a studio, had no fucking clue to what we were doing, trying to put an album out, trying to do our best to do something. It was all analog. We just were a bunch of kids trying to, express ourselves. And it was a magical time, and it was great. But it's like, you can't expect us 30 years later to still have that total, ignorance. I mean, the fact that Onward to Golgotha came out sounding the way it did, it really was a fluke, because none of us knew what the fuck we were doing. We knew we liked the songs. We knew we wanted to be an oppressive sounding album. But when it really came down to production wise, I know for myself, I didn't know what the fuck I was just like, I just wanted to sound mean, pissed off, dirty, grindy, crusty, whatever, blasphemous, but all those terms, what does that mean when it comes to production wise? The guys look at me like I'm from Mars, But you can't expect to get exactly that, but there's always going to be flavors of that, because, it's still Incantation, and anything that I'm a part of is always going to have a little bit of Incantation in it, and everything that everyone's adapted to in the band. It just sounds right, and it sounds like Incantation.
Let me ask you a question, and maybe this is a way to kind of bookend things, or this line of questioning is a way to bookend things. You've been doing this for a while, and you've been through many highs, and probably a couple of lows. Did you ever get to a point where you were willing to, or not willing, but where you were ready to give it up, or were you at least tempted to give it up?
Well, it wasn't that I wanted to 100% give it up. I thought around 2008, I started to. Kyle left the band, and I was disappointed that he left, and I was not inspired at that time to really write anymore, which is really rare for me. So I thought, well, maybe it's the end of the band, and if it is, you have to respect that, and I figured, well, okay, if we're going to do this, let's try to bookend this with, trying to get together with some of the guys that we did Onward to Go Gotha with, and try to maybe do a few shows that kind of, get together with the old guys and do some stuff and say, okay, let's just call it a day or whatever, maybe, or whatnot. And we tried doing that, and, working with the old guys was cool, but then of course, things came up again, and kind of, unfortunately, it fell apart, which happens, because sometimes the reasons why people aren't jamming together anymore are just, sometimes you need to just listen to it and be like, okay, it worked when it worked. And, at a certain point, it doesn't work anymore, and you have to accept that. But what came up from that situation is, working with Chuck and working with Alex Books. And we realized that there was still, something there, still a spark there to continue the band, but it happened very organically. What happened is Kyle ended up coming back into the folds of the band, or maybe, what was it, around 10 or so, 2010-ish or 9, I can't remember. But once Kyle got back into the band and we were just at practice, all of a sudden things just started to feel right again. They started like the chemistry was just there, and it's something that is very organic. It's like, and I knew I couldn't force it to happen. Like I wasn't even interested. Like, it wasn't like, well, I got these guys back, let's start right. No, it was like at practice, it was just like, oh, I feel inspired. Let's just do this, and I, probably
I remember,
did ooh, let's do this. Oh, like getting all excited because these things come in, and it's just like, you just like, oh wow, the magic's coming back somehow, so it just kind of continued. But Chuck, you can go on with what you're
Well, I mean, I think it was great because I remember we were in your basement at the time, and it was like one of the very first times, actually jammed with Kyle, and we were playing some of the songs from a set, I guess, that we had done with Jim and Craig at the time, and he looks at you and says, "Oh crap, these guys actually learned it." So he knew that he had to apply himself a bit, and he's like, all right, okay, next one. And we had a couple of shows, I think. No, we didn't have this shows yet. I'm sorry, because we were on the brink of doing that After Party Massacre, I guess, at the time. And, no, we had to have gone on the road because you wrote Absolved in Blood on stage during a sound check. That's what I mean about the organics of it all, is that kind of inspiration, when it hits, you just run with it.
Yeah.
And having Alex, Alex was on fire. I mean, he was coming up with all kinds of great ideas, and then we just started piecing everything together, and it's very similar to the way Unholy Deification is that at that given moment, at that time, when John's already, his mental, state or focus was on like, maybe it's time to hang up the hat and call it a day. And then all of a sudden, whoosh, all the inspiration comes in, all the writing comes in, and everything just gets turned on its head. And then it's like, you want to do an album? You know what I mean? So that was, it was cool transition.
It was very organic. And you can't fake that stuff. That's the thing, is like, it was because of working with Chuck, Kyle, and Alex at that time. there was just something there that just worked, and it was like I I don't even know how it happened, because it's just like 1 second, you know, you're thinking, well, okay, maybe it's done or whatever, and then all of a sudden there's just a spark, and it's just like everything just fell into place. And I'm grateful to be a part of that kind of thing. That's why it's like these things can never be just like spoken about as just like my oh, I kept the band going and everything like that and blah blah blah. It's all, because a lot of people like to look at it just as, since I was in from beginning to the end, and yes, I have the perseverance, but it's the chemistry between the other people that keep it alive and keep it vital. And it was the chemistry for many years between myself and Kyle that kept it going. And then once Kyle left and then came back, and it was a mixture between Kyle coming back and Chuck and Alex, in that jam room, or in whatever, playing with the band. It was just that chemistry. It was like that feeling, like maybe it was like I felt like the band sounding right, everything sounding good, and then it makes me just think, okay, let's do something here, because I just have an idea, a spark, and that spark turned into a whole new era of the band, which is just it's just mind blowing, because you get to think that we were on the verge of calling it a day, and then the amount of wealth of music we've written since that time is just insane.
It is an awful lot.
There's so much more to be said, when I thought there was like, maybe it's done, and there was like ridiculous amount more to be said by everybody in the band.
Well, so the final question for the two of you then: what is it about what you do right now as a musician that you love the most?
There's too many aspects to the equation. I mean, I love the writing. I love playing. I love touring. Yeah, like there's too many aspects of it. The little reward moments such as this, like tomorrow, is the satisfaction of having that particular piece of inspiration, that particular wealth of influence and the compatibility and everything. When you finally have that in your hand, that's like the moment that I look forward to. Everything that leads up to it is also its own joy, but it's like that achievement aspect thing. Like I love that too. You know what I mean? So to pinpoint one in particular, that's kind of impossible. They're all very integrated into one another.
Yeah, it's very difficult, because for me, like writing songs with the guys out of thin air is an amazing situation to be in, and to have that, nurture that song until it comes to what it ends up being on the album. That's an amazing experience, and I love being a part of the creative aspect of it. It's just, I'm just musically, I'm just a creative person, I think, so I really love to be a part of it. And I mean, playing live and just having that vent of everything and just feeling the music in your veins is such an amazing feeling too. It's like, man, how do you choose between the both? I mean, it's like the perfect, both are like amazing, because it stimulates, you in different ways. I mean, the creative process is one thing, and the expression of live is another thing, that are, you just can't, they're not comparable, as far as like they're not competing with each other anyway. So I think both I'd have to choose. I know you're asked for one, but I have to give both, because both are really super important to me. And there's a million other things that are important, but the music for me is always going to be the most important part of anything. I mean, the connection and friendship is all part of the music, but just that working with people and creating something out of nowhere man, that's fucking cool. It's such a cool thing, especially like I said, working with people that are like, you're coming up with something and they're coming up with something, and then before you know it, you got something. That's, man, is that fun to be around?
Like, where does it even come from? You know what I mean? Like, it feels like a mystery, because it's like, okay, it's done. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, you created something absolutely out of just your mind. That's it.
It's pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on an absolutely sensational record. By the time people see this, they'll have heard the album. I look forward to seeing how it's received, and hopefully see you at some point in the UK.
I hope so too, man. Yeah, that'd be great. Hell yeah.
We definitely look forward to returning to the UK. I have to say, on the last run, it's been fucking phenomenal. I mean, the response we got at that Damnation Fest was just mind-blowing. And the last 3 shows he played there in Manchester, London, and was it Bristol? Fuck, dude. They were just fucking awesome. And it was so rewarding for us to be able to play those shows. We don't always get to the UK. It's for some reason, it's difficult. I know there's the Brexit stuff there that makes it a little more difficult for bands to get there now. But every time we do get there, you guys really make us feel welcome, and it was just fucking awesome. It really is.
Excellent. All right, take care of yourselves, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye. You just listened to Megaron of Unholy Deification, the brand new Incantation record. I want to say a big thank you to John and to Chuck for their time. Do make sure that you go and check that record out on Bandcamp. I'll post a link in the description to the podcast. It is available on Relapse Records, and it is absolutely sensational. Speaking of legendary bands and sensational music, let's talk now about the new Marduk record, Memento Mori. And before I start, I'm going to do a quick countdown of my 6 favorite Marduk records, and that way I can set the scene. We can do a bit of calibration, so you can decide whether or not to place any stock in what I've got to say about Memento Mori. Jumping straight into it, at number 6, I've got Opus Nocturne. That was released by Osmos Productions back in 1994. It featured Joachim Gothberg on vocals, so preceding Legion. It's definitely my favorite of Marduk's earlier records, based entirely on the quality and the consistency of the songs on the album. It had a real second wave feel to it, and I think it was the first album where Marduk really started to sound like they were comfortable in their own skin. Like their first album, you can hear they were kind of dabbling with different ideas. With this one, they felt like, or it felt to me like they'd hit their straps, and it was a great record. At number 5 is Plague Angel. That was released by Regain Records back in 2004. This one marked the first appearance of the soon-to-be legendary, although I would argue he was probably legendary before he joined the band, but the legendary Mortus on vocals. When I first heard it, it really sounded to me like a statement of intent. It followed a pair of albums in Le Danse Macabre and World Funeral that weren't bad, but they weren't particularly exciting. And for me, they'd really kind of taken me to a point in my relationship with Marduk where I'd started to sleep on the band a little bit. And that actually was exacerbated by the fact that the record that preceded those two, 1999's Panzer Division Marduk, and my number 4 favorite album of, or in the Marduk canon, was such an utterly violent, brilliant, simplistic brain melter of an album. I mean, an album that made absolutely no bones of its intent. It was so good and so well written that it even managed to make Legion sound good. And again, I don't want to, hate on the guy too much, but you all know from listening to the news rants and, various times that I've spoken about the band, I'm not the biggest Legion fan, but on this album, he actually did sound pretty cool. Now, that being said, as a side note, especially when you hear some of these songs done live now when they're out on tour, if ever there was a record that merited a second visit to the studio, Panzer Division Marduk may well be it. For further evidence of how good Mortus might sound doing some of these vocals, look no further than my number 3 album in my Marduk countdown, 2012's Serpent Sermon. This was perhaps one of the last truly great Marduk records, for a while anyway. When it was released, it took a more simplistic approach in comparison to Wormwood, which had come out previous to that, but it showed off every one of the band's strengths, and it also injected a real sense of dynamics that resulted in some of the band's best songs ever, in my view, particularly the last song on the album, the song World of Blades, which I think is phenomenal, and I am gobsmacked that they don't play it live, because it's a song that would close off a show so well. But anyway, at number 2, it is the conceptual, provocative, and utterly brilliant Romans 5:12, one of the most experimental albums that the band had put out up to that point, maybe that they've put out in their entire career. It was released in 2007 by Blood Dawn Productions. Amongst other things, it features an absolutely sensational guest appearance by Alan Averill on the song Accuser, Opposer. There are a couple of clips of that live with Alan on stage with the band, just phenomenal stuff. There is also a ton of atmosphere coming your way by way of instrumental passages like 1651, and to my ears, to me, this record really presented the clearest evidence that hiring Mortus had been a stroke of genius by the band. I personally did not think that they would be able to top Romans 5:12 until I laid my ears upon the masterpiece there was 2009's Wormwood. This is without a doubt the finest record that this band have ever done. It's the one that has the most in common stylistically with Mortis's other band, Funeral Mist. Again, something that anyone who's a member of the Legion should be familiar with. And when it kicked off with the absolutely phenomenal Nowhere, No One, Nothing, you knew you were in for a wild ride. Wormwood is an album that really takes several listens to understand, and actually even more to fully appreciate. I did not enjoy it as much as I liked Romans 5:12 at first listen, but the more you get into it, the more you realize that it really is a record that showcases Marduk at the peak of their powers, whether it's technical performances at an individual level or just songwriting as a whole. Everything here clicks into place from the word go, and when you get to the album's brilliant closer as a garment, you feel like you've experienced something monumental. Like I said, it was without question my favorite Marduk album of all time, which begs the follow-up question, where does album number 15, Memento Mori, fit into the grand scheme of things? Well, first of all, Memento Mori is a huge step up in quality from both 2015's Frontschwein and especially from 2018's Victoria, which, with the exception of the brilliant final cut, and again, there's a repeating pattern here. They seem to do really, really good closing songs as a rule, especially on their last couple of records. But yeah, Victoria, with the exception of that song, was not really up to par at all. They also made the cardinal mistake of including children's choirs on one of the songs. Just absolutely atrocious, in my opinion. I also might be reading too much into it from where I'm sitting, but I feel like when I played Memento Mori for the first time, there's a real sense of self-awareness from the band. It feels like they knew that they needed, or they had some ground to make up. So when that title track kicks in, right after the short intro, and the title track being the first song, it feels like the band are going all out to announce that they are back, and they are there to prove that they are still one of black metal's absolute elite in 2023. The song Memento Mori is followed up by the rolling mid-tempo battering ram that is Heart of the Funeral. That track is both grim and really infectious, but it's around the opening bars of Shovel Beat's Scepter, which tips its hat to the Marduk live experience. I've spoken about this again on the news rant previously. You kind of have Mortis doing this like shouted, screamed opening monologue set against this really cool sort of brass orchestral backdrop. And it just, again, presents the band, in a really powerful, confident light, more so than I think they've sounded in over a decade. And I fully expect that when this song is wheeled out on their next tours, people are going to lose their ever-loving minds. Elsewhere, we get Year of the Maggot, which combines really schizophrenic rhythm changes and smatterings of keyboard to devastating effect. And once again, as has been the case with a couple of albums we've mentioned now, the closer, As We Were, is absolutely sensational. I don't know whether I'm reading too much into it, but I kind of get the sense that Morgan Hutchinson, who is a very storied fan of Glenn Danzig, allowed, or is quite playfully teasing us with some of that Glenn Danzig love in the song's opening riff. But then, that song kind of progresses and builds, and it easily turns into a contender for not only one of the year's best songs, but perhaps one of the finest additions to the Marduk back catalogue. As We Are is the name of the track. I may have called it As We Were earlier on. You guys know what I was talking about. And that, of course, off of Memento Mori, the brand new Marduk album, a furious comeback by every measure. And to close the loop on that review, I now ask the question, the question that is most likely on everybody's minds, where does this album land in my Marduk stack ranking? Well, I think it's a little too soon to tell. It almost certainly would fit in that top 6 quite comfortably, I think, but we'll see how I feel in about 6 months' time. One thing that I am almost certainly convinced of, this is one of the very best albums of 2023 so far, and it is great to have this band back and firing on all cylinders. So check them out. I'll post a link to their Bandcamp, as per usual, in the description to the podcast. Head over there, and if you buy yourself some music, then gently encourage Morgan, Mortus, and the rest of the gang to reach out and request an audience with old Jackson on Into the Necrosphere. I have tried to make it happen, but sadly some record labels are a little more responsive than others. But if I can make it happen at some point, I will almost certainly try and get Morgan or somebody from the band on the show. Right now, my friends, some of you may well be thinking that these Marduk guys are garbage because Cradle of Filth's Dusk in Her Embrace was clearly the greatest black metal album of all time. You are entitled to your opinion, but if that is indeed the opinion that you hold, then it might be time for you to get to step in, because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
Alright, Legion, let's do this shit. First up on Metal Storm, we've got War Curse launching a new track. It says here, Ohio's War Curse thrashes it up with their new single, Miracle Broker, from their upcoming record, Confession. The latter is due out on October the 20th, 2023 on Black Light Media. The accompanying music video was directed by Brian Bone Thornburn. No idea what War Curse sounds like, but I do quite like the name, so let's check it out. So I just had a quick gander at Metal Archives. Turns out that War Curse is about 10 years old. They put out their first album independently. The second one they put out on Svart Records, and now they've been signed to Black Light Media, whose parent company is Metal Blade. Not surprised that Metal Blade Records would sign them. They sound like a Metal Blade signing. I mean, not that Metal Blade has a house sound, but certainly when it comes to this style of music, they do tend to sort of have a... it seems whoever works in A&R in Metal Blade seems to have a fondness for this type of music. I don't mind it. I think that shouting in key style of the vocalist isn't bad. It reminds me a little bit of Darkane, particularly how they sounded on 2002's Expanding Senses. But I must say, the song does kind of feel a little bit flat to me at the moment. We'll see where it goes from here, but when it comes to this sort of music, for it to be really effective, in my view, it kind of does need to take you to that place where, it really kind of grabs you by the insides of your stomach and yanks it around. You need to have that burst of adrenaline, and so far I'm not getting it from this. But let's carry on. Not bad. I think that guitarist is excellent, but the song itself just sounds a little like it's stuck in one gear for me. It's not offensive, but it doesn't do anything for me. It's not memorable. And I've got to say, as far as the lyrical themes are concerned, if you were watching this on YouTube, you can see the video. It's all about televangelists. I mean, yes, they're assholes and they, deserve to get an ass kicking and, etc., etc. But it's very 1990s as far as a topic to sing about is concerned. So mediocre, I think, is the judgment on that particular song. Next up, we've got Wolves in the Throne Room, who have launched a brand new single called Twin-Mouthed Spring, which is part of their oncoming EP, Crypt of Ancestral Knowledge. The clip was directed and produced by the band. I really, really liked the last Wolves in the Throne Room album. Didn't actually realize that they've even got an EP coming up, but let's hear what this one sounds like. I definitely don't envy anybody who is going to try and follow up a record like Primordial Arcana, which was the last Wolves in the Throne Room album that they put out in 2021. That record to me was a real high watermark in this band's already stellar career. And a tough act to follow, I think. But, unsurprisingly, I think Twin-Mouthed Spring seems to kind of go down a similar route, maybe not as severe as that record. I mean, not that that record was, Marduk, but it had some faster moments and a few sequences that were maybe a little bit more aggressive. This tends to focus more on the atmospheric elements. If you're using Primordial Arcana as a reference point, I'd maybe say this reminds me a little bit of Underworld Aurora. I don't know whether this was recorded during the Primordial Arcana sessions, but I wouldn't be surprised. It's got a similar sound, similar vibe to the music. Overall, I like it. So let's get back to the video. There's something about this bit we're listening to right now that's very mid-90s black metal to me. It especially reminds me of a song called, I think it's Broderskapets Ring, off of Stormblast by Dimmu Borgir. And I know, some folks are going to listen to that or hear me say that and go, how dare you, heresy, you don't know what you're talking about, mate. But that is actually my favorite Dimmu Borgir song, and probably my favorite Dimmu Borgir release. So it's meant as a compliment. But I like the song very much, as a matter of fact. In spite of the fact that these gentlemen big-timed Old Jackson and have yet to appear on Into the Necrosphere, despite me extending an invite their way. But looking forward to the EP. It'll be interesting to see how this tour with Black Braid goes down. Speaking of outrage, I have still been fielding the odd nugget of outrage on YouTube in particular. I had one guy post a comment, which has since been deleted for whatever reason, on my Black Braid episode. It was some sort of, I don't know, sinister haiku that he left there. It read, liberal drunk, cancelled, you're cancelled. So, anyway, I don't know what the fuck that was all about, but like I said, man, the dude is young. He made a mistake. He's owned up to it. Let's hope he doesn't fuck up again. And it's a good bill as far as a musical match for Black Braid is concerned. Going out with the chaps from Wolves in the Throne Room. Anyway, let us move on, my friends. We've got news here about Rotting Christ embarking on a Latin American tour. A 17-date long run that begins on February the 6th, 2024 in Monterrey, Mexico. I sure hope that is going to be done post the recording of their new album. Next up, we also have Afterbirth, who are debuting a new track. Hovering Human Head Drones is the name of the song. It's the second advanced track from Afterbirth's upcoming long player, In But Not Of. And the new outing, it says here, is set for an official October the 20th release. Let's give it a whirl. I know Afterbirth's music, and I was just waiting for those vocals to kick in. If you were paying attention earlier, you'll recall that John and I were talking about how difficult it is for a band like Incantation. That is really best enjoyed as an end-to-end record experience. How difficult it is for them to choose a pre-release single, or maybe one or two singles. I would argue that with Afterbirth, it's even harder. Like I said, I know this band. I really liked their previous record, 4-Dimensional Flesh, that they put out in 2020. And that was an album that you definitely needed to appreciate in its entirety to kind of get it. I suspect it will be exactly the same year. There's likely to be heavy songs on the album, and then there's these kind of crazy, spacey, atmospheric, almost kind of proggy songs. The melodies, the atmosphere at the start of the song, top-notch as far as I'm concerned, excellent. The vocals, they take some getting used to, but they do make sense when you listen to the whole thing. They remind me a little bit, actually, of, and in fact, the whole vibe of the song reminds me a little bit of Lucid Interval by Cephalic Carnage, which is a phenomenal record, but yeah, similar kind of feel, I think. But yeah, I really like it. But I will say this, I can completely understand if the uninitiated were to listen to this and go, this sounds like a space rock band fronted by a man who is dying of violent irritable bowel syndrome. But anyway, let's give it another 60 seconds. And that part sounds amazing. That guitar lead, it sounds absolutely incredible. I like shredding as much as the next guy, but I absolutely love when somebody is able to say so much with something so simplistic. I keep referring to him, but Greg McIntosh to me is the master of that. I think Kenny Hickey of Typo Negative was incredibly good at that as well, and this dude knows his shit. I like that song. I concede it may not be for everybody, but I enjoy it. Wasp is going to be releasing the 7 Savage Deluxe 8 LP box set. It looks like they're just packaging all of the records that they put out while they were on Capitol Records into one thing. Wasp, The Last Command, Inside the Electric Circus, The Headless Children, The Crimson Idol, Live in the Raw, and then a disc full of bonus tracks and B-sides. I think that of those, the ones that I think are essential listening are Live in the Raw and The Crimson Idol. Both of them fucking fantastic. On Live in the Raw, you've got phenomenal versions of 9-5 Nasty, Sleeping in the Fire, The Manimal, Blind in Texas. And then on Crimson Idol, I mean, every single song is fantastic. And if you want proof of the fact that when it came to this style of music, Blackie Lawless, though he may look like a man who has stuck his head into a nest of angry wasps, no pun intended, the song The Gypsy Meets the Boy is just fucking incredible. Stunning vocals, stunning music, absolutely great. A lot of folks that I knew at the time were big fans of Motley Crue and big fans of Skid Row and the like, but for me, the second that I heard Wasp, it wiped all such bands completely and utterly off the ceiling. Cardinals Folly are joining forces with Soul Seller Records. Oftentimes we mock bands for having bad band names on this segment, and I would say Cardinals Folly almost certainly fits into that category. It sounds like a ritual that you would perform at Bohemian Grove. The politician dressing up in an owl costume, peeing on each other and saying, "Come on, let's perform the Cardinals Folly ritual." Okay, next up, Besta are presenting a new video. It says here, grindcore purveyors Besta are premiering a brand new music video for Olhar Serafico. The track was taken from their recently released album, Terra M. Desapago, and the clip was filmed and edited by Henrique Rees. Don't really know Besta, but I like me some grindcore on occasion. So let's hear what this sounds like.
C'était
You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not hearing an awful lot of grind or core in this. Maybe like metalcore or thrashcore. I mean, I would argue that if somebody was pretty good at spinning a yarn, if they could sell me on the idea of this being the new Soulfly, I would believe them. It kind of has almost a Soulfly kind of vibe to it. I don't hate it at all, by the way. I actually think it's pretty good, but it's definitely not it's not grindcore in the crazy, unhinged, big destroyer, cephalic carnage, or brutal truth vibe. The song is over 6 minutes long. If it is to be seen as grindcore, it actually reminds me of a French band who I remember getting when I was writing for Chronicles of Chaos years ago, and I really quite liked their music. Inhumate. That was very, very good, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of this. But so far so good. Nice little breakdown there. I think the riff sounds good. As much as the vocalist sounds like Max Cavalera, he does sound pretty cool. Overall, thumbs up for me. I don't mind that at all. Am I going to put it at the very top of my most anticipated list of for the remainder of 2023? Probably not, but I don't hate it. On Thorns I Lie have dropped a new song. It says here, atmospheric death doom ensemble from Greece. On Thorns I Lie are unveiling the second advanced track, Fallen from Grace, off their upcoming self-titled album. The latter drops on October the 13th, 2023 via Season of Mist. Let us hear what this sounds like. So this is album number 10 for these guys, if my calculations are correct. And like their countrymen in Septic Flesh and Rotting Christ, on Thorns I Lie definitely don't sound like they are ready to book into the local retirement village just yet. I mean, that's a spicy song. They have gone through a lot of lineup changes, I know that much. And actually checking Metal Archive just now, it seems like they've got a new vocalist, a new bassist, and a new guitarist, which is obviously going to make quite a big difference to the way that they sound. But in comparison to Threnos, which was the last record that they put out back in 2020, I would actually say that this vocalist certainly sounds better. I liked Threnos. I thought it was a good album. But this vocalist is sounding like a hard motherfucker. I also like the fact that with the riffing, there's definitely a blacker element to the riffing, something a little bit darker than on Threnos. And it kind of seems to permeate or find its way through pretty much everything. The keyboards sound a little darker. The whole vibe of the song just feels a little bit more eerie, a little bit more in my vein, and therefore also in the vein of the Legion. Let's get back to it. There's a really subtle progression through the song, especially we've just gone through the first 2 minutes now, but, I kind of feel like they're repeating a quite similar blueprint, but then they're just adding a little twist to it here and there, and I like it. I think it sounds excellent. I'll tell you what, there are some incredibly exciting things going on in the Greek metal scene right now. Between the old guard, who seemingly always show up, have consistently been putting out great music, really without fail. All the way through to newer bands like Vothroch and Utkana. I think you could make an argument right now that Greece, sorry folks, it's a whole 25 degrees centigrade today as I'm recording this, and here in the UK, we've not had a summer, so I'm not used to this hot weather. My brain is on the verge of melting. But anyway, what I was saying was, there's an argument to be made that Greece is like the Poland or could be a new Poland or a new France as far as extreme music is concerned. I mean, some probably would make the argument that's already the case. But I definitely think, with those new bands and with the old guard, there's fucking cool things happening here. If you like Vothroch, by the way, keep an eye on my Instagram, because in amongst the usual baseless conspiracy theories and other propaganda that I normally post, that is a joke, of course, I'm going to be running a little contest related to Vothroch over the course of the next couple of days. You can win yourself a very fancy looking t-shirt. I just need to figure out what I need to demand of the potential winner before I actually announce anything. But I'm also going to have Philip of Vothroch on the podcast at some point, hopefully before the end of the year. That record that they put out, Odium, I reviewed it, obviously, I think back in January or February. Phenomenal stuff. And if you have not yet listened to it, then you need to put it on your to-do list for straight after this episode. Okay, Job for a Cowboy premiere, new single and video. The irony and the timing is not lost of me, and I can tell you there was absolutely no premeditation to it when last week I did the countdown of some of my favorite records of the 2000s. I spoke, of course, of Sun Eater by Job for a Cowboy, and I said at the time, it'd be so great if they put out a new record. Literally a day later, news breaks that they're putting out something new. So it says here, Arizona death metalers Job for a Cowboy return after a near decade-long hiatus with their brand new single and accompanying video for the Agony Sleeping Storm. The track comes by way of the band's first new full-length in a decade, set for release in 2024 via Metal Blade Records. Johnny Davies says of the new single, the Agony Sleeping Storm gives a slice of our upcoming concept record. Recording the video, the band collaborated extensively with director K. Hunter Lumar of Digital Mile, while our bassist Nick co-directed. The concept was inspired by a close friend who embarked on a relentless quest for profound enlightenment through the incessant abuse of hallucinogenic drugs. However, as they delved deeper into their religious-like experimentation, they began exhibiting symptoms of bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. They came to believe they could access an alternate esoteric reality through hallucinogenic intoxication, where they encountered Gnostic and biblical figures and imagery. These songs reflect their thoughts, ideas, and experiences. Sounds like some pretty heavy stuff, so let's hear whether the music can keep pace. I have to tell you, I mean, they've not been, or they've basically been out of circulation for nearly a decade, and they sound like they have absolutely not lost a step. That is excellent. I think it's a good idea for them to only put out this record in 2024, though, because, you know, I think unless you're of the cult, grim, and necro variety and you enjoy putting out albums unannounced in December, like Funeral Mist or like Mysterium, then really there's not much by way of windows opportunity for you to put out albums for the rest of this year where you're not going to be going, you know, directly into heavy traffic. But, as I said, I think this is excellent. I mean, it really kind of seems to pick up exactly where Sun Eater left off. You've got technical, you've got melodic, you've got heavy, you've got grooves, you've got Johnny Davey sounding like a beast, you've got Nick sounding like one of the best bass players on the face of the earth. If you're a Job for a Cowboy fan, you are in your element listening to this, and I am a big fan. I know some of you potentially will listen to this and go, it's a bit too polished, and it's, you know, a bit too clean sounding for my liking. You know, you're entitled to your opinion, but for me, this is absolutely top-notch. That part sounds fantastic. The whole song so far sounds absolutely sensational, and I like the music video too. So kudos to Job for a Cowboy, and it is good to have you guys back. All right, I want to go to No Clean Singing, another absolutely fantastic metal website. They tend to be really, really good if you are just looking for a bunch of really obscure underground stuff to listen to. They're great for new discoveries. I would say potentially even better than the Black Metal Promotions YouTube channel. And there's two songs in particular that I want to listen to. One, because Marco of Stellar Master Elite recommended it. And the other one, just because the album cover and the description that they used here sounds so fucking hilarious. So I have been saving this moment for the news rant so that I can share my first experience of New York's Gravesend with you all. So it says here, only in metal would a come online like this make people eager to listen. Gowanus Death Stomp compounds the cruelty displayed on 2021's debut, Methods of Human Disposal, into an ever more gritty and primal barrage of violence. At the crossroads of criminal depravity and urban malaise, Gravesend utilizes many tools of the trade. Black death, grind, and war metal all meld seamlessly into a tar pit of scathing back-alley sadism and acid-tongued vocals. Whoever wrote that deserves a fucking award. They deserve all the awards. It's one of the best press releases that I've ever read. I am certainly eager enough to listen to this, so let's hear what Even a Worm Will Turn by Gravesend sounds like. Holy fuck, that is great. That is absolutely fucking crushing. Just looking at what No Clean Singing has written here, the writer comments after that brilliant press release, while I don't mean all people would be eager, just people like me, but people like me will also need more than well-crafted nastiness in the come-on. We'll need it in the music too, and fortunately, Even a Worm Will Turn brings that in abundance. More specifically, it brings ruthless percussive beatings, violently berserk riffing with a toxic tone, blood-letting screams, and careening tempos that convulse and stagger, along with bursts of chugging that might make you think you're a flimsy doll being shaken by an angry brat. Or maybe getting clubbed by a tire iron wielded by someone who's got groove. It says here, the album is called Gowanus Death Stomp, as I mentioned earlier, and it's coming out on October the 27th from 20 Buck Spin. 20 Buck Spin were also responsible for one of last year's late entries into my top 30 of 2022, Daivas of Sheer Will and Black Magic, or Through Sheer Will and Black Magic, which was fucking incredible. So I feel like this is going to be the Daiva of 2023. Let's get back to it. Those hardcore crossover elements that you hear there. That blackened element that they talk about is definitely there. The war metal is definitely there as well. I mean, you couldn't have described this any better than the guy from No Clean Singing did. That is beyond top notch. That's my favorite discovery of the week so far by a mile. And I'm just having a gander at the Gravesend Metal Archives page. It says here the themes of their lyrics are urban decay, filth, and disgust. So, yeah, absolutely sounds like it is right up my street. I'm going to have to check out that Methods of Human Disposal record as well. It sounds like when I look at the song titles, it literally sounds, when you look at song titles like Needle Park, it sounds like they're describing San Francisco. So maybe it's about the guy going on a road trip through the red cities of the blue cities, I should say, of North America. But very, very good stuff. All right, let's check out the next recommendation. So this was from Marco of Stellar Master Elite, a man whose reputation as a recommender of the highest caliber is thus far reasonably unbesmirched, but we're about to find out whether or not that's going to remain so. He messaged me about this band on Saturday. They're called Tetragrammacide, and they're out of India. He was acting like a schoolboy on the night before Christmas. No Clean Singing describes this as follows: among the learned of the dark arts of malignant and mutilating Black Death metal, the name Kolkata looms large on the global map. And Kolkata is home to Tetragrammacide, who are now surfacing their lineup produced to a duo with their second album 6 years after the first one. As a preview of the exhilarating ruination to come, we have the song Knew it arches over the neither city of cubes, had it meditates while hanging upside down inside a tesseract Kaaba. That is one song title, my friends. Perhaps that will remind you of Tetragrammicide's fondness for song titles of extravagant length and perplexing meaning. As for the music, prepare for a creepy symphonic intro followed by hyperspeed discharges of automatic drum weaponry and power-loosening bass frenzies, corrosive riffing that swarms and writhes in monstrous madness, and words discharged in equally monstrous roars. Sounds like it could potentially be brilliant, so let's find out. This reminds me a little bit of early Crisian. It also reminds me of Acheron. It reminds me of Vital Remains. It has that real, like, occult death metal vibe to it. Like, maybe a little bit of a Grave Miasma hint there as well. But I absolutely fucking love it. I mean, that is right up my street. Great atmosphere, awesome riffing. They're a band that knows how to deploy chaos in a way that is very, very effective, which, again, if I had to make a comparison, an Archon, who we were raving about earlier this year, they did the same thing on their album. The album, by the way, is going to be called Typho Tantric Aphorisms from the Arachnophidian Quran. So look out for that. It gets released on Iron Bonehead Productions on November the 3rd. Whereas some of the records we heard today will not be rocketing up my most anticipated list, this one is definitely up there right now.
Son of Lord, in the
Great music video too, top notch. I would say Gravesend is maybe my favorite discovery still of this most recent session of the news rant, but that comes pretty goddamn close. Okay, folks, I did say that I wanted to talk a bit about the Rammstein, or the ongoing saga of Rammstein's frontman Till Lindemann. The Guardian reports, and I should say reluctantly reports, because genuinely, if you go down the article, you can hear Ben Beaumont Thomas's sense of despair and sadness at the fact that the beast that is Till Lindemann has been effectively absolved of any wrongdoing. It says here, sexual assault investigation into Rammstein frontman dropped. Berlin prosecutors cite lack of evidence and testimony from alleged victims following investigation into rock star Till Lindemann. So to wit, Lithuanian police didn't even bother following up on it because they thought it was nonsense. Berlin stepped up and they said, we're going to look into every aspect of this guy's life. Found nothing. And lo and behold, anyone who followed this and has half a functioning brain already knew this was going to be the case. The accusations against him, not only from Shelby Lynn, the simpleton who first accused him of sexually assaulting and drugging her, then she retracted that, and then she said she'd been groomed into doing God knows what by some handler, or some fucking female sidekick of Till Lindemann's. Her and all of these supposedly hundreds of Till Lindemann's victims, everything that they said proven to be complete and utter nonsense. And again, like I said, if you followed this story, you knew this was going to be the case. You could just look at the video from the evening that a lot of people shared. There's a woman called Colonel Kurtz who posted a lot of stuff about this on her YouTube channel, and she did some really excellent investigation into it. She had witnesses who were actually at the show on the night saying, hey, this woman is crazy. It's never happened. We've been backstage at Rammstein shows before. Everything is really, really controlled. Everyone gets, drinks with the caps on, and, everything is sealed that you get, etc., etc. Now, given that this has happened, given that this has been proven to be bullshit, some of you may wonder what is next for Till Lindemann, what is next in this story. I would assume that we are very soon going to be inundated with retractions and apologies from not only the metal press, but also the mainstream media, who not only declared this guy guilty long before there'd even been an investigation done. I mean, they literally declared him guilty upon receipt of Shelby Lynn's accusation. There were women lining up at Rammstein shows with signs saying, kill Till. These supposedly were, I don't know whether they were fans and, had now come to hate the man, but, that's what innocent until proven guilty meant in this case. Absolutely nothing. We also had the likes of Paul Hockenos, who's a Berlin-based journalist, posting on the Foreign Policy magazine website, Rammstein is Germany's scary new normal. The band's continued popularity is a sign of the country's increasingly right-wing zeitgeist. So, I expect apologies from all of these people, frank and full retractions of the things they said. I would also imagine that we will imminently see the near $900,000 plus that have been raised online to cover the legal fees of, again, all of the hundreds of victims of that sexual mastermind Till Lindemann. That's going to be given back to the folks that donated it, or at the very least redistributed to worthy causes, ideally working in the prevention of actual sexual assault. And then finally, Shelby herself, in an effort to prove that this wasn't all about attention and about somebody who, I don't know whether she was obsessed with the dude or whether she just saw this as an easy way to make money and shake down a band. But she'll prove that that wasn't the case and that her intentions were pure, and she'll give away her money to similarly worthy causes. And of course, if you know this podcast, you know that I'm talking complete and utter sarcastic nonsense right now, because none of that's going to happen, because the mob of simps and imbeciles that typically get behind a story like this, they've probably already moved on to their next thing. Shelby, I saw on her Twitter page, is going to keep waving the candle for as long as 3 people will listen to her. And again, we knew all along this wasn't about justice. This wasn't about some innocent person who'd been assaulted by this monstrous rock star. If it were the case, then there would almost certainly be something turned up by the police, who were literally salivating at the idea of being able to throw the book at Till. And I said at the time, if he's guilty, absolutely fucking string the guy up by his nuts. But at the same time, throwing around spurious accusations like this does nothing but damage the cases of women who actually have legitimate claims. And as I've said before, I'm a father to a daughter. If a woman has a legitimate claim and there's proof of it, the guy should have his fucking balls chopped off. But anyway, so that saga is over now, my friends. We move on just to wrap things up to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. The Osbournes are going to revive their podcast after 5 years. That makes them my competitors. I'm going to send a strongly worded letter to them and tell them that they don't stand a chance. So I don't necessarily think we have the same. We've got the same audience. Sebastian Bach doesn't have a problem with Paul Stanley using backing tapes during live shows. Neither do I. I don't give a fuck. I think if you're 74 years old and you have the stamina to be able to put on a show like Paul Stanley does, then more power to you. You can use as many backing tapes as you want. We've got Lars Ulrich on Metallica's enduring popularity. It's crazy that this is still happening. I think so too, especially based on the quality of some of the muck that they have turned out of late. In similar Metallica news, they have postponed their second Phoenix concert because James Hetfield had tested positive for COVID-19. I did read that apparently he had to cut short one of the sets as well because he was really struggling with his throat. I should say, I had a guy who posted a comment on my Cleese interview from probably about 100 episodes ago. He'd obviously listened to the episode end to end, and he took great offense to the fact that both Nas and I had some pretty strong views on the government response to COVID. One of the things that I got the impression from what he said was that we thought that COVID-19 was a scam, and perhaps my strong words about it may have come across like I'm a disbeliever. I most definitely am not. I had COVID. It fucking sucked. I don't think that I was lucky to come out of there alive, but it certainly wasn't pleasant, and I had symptoms for a great many weeks after. My issue has always been with the response to COVID, and the longer we have to reflect on it after the fact, the more I'm opposed to things like lockdowns. Here in the UK, they've now basically admitted that it was a purely political decision. And on general principle, I don't believe in government mandates to inject yourself with anything. I'm not against the vaccine. I got the vaccine, but I would imagine that if you are pro-choice, you would certainly agree that it is your body and your business. And if the vaccine was meant to stop, the virus, from being spread, then there's absolutely no reason why somebody who doesn't want it should have to get it. But anyway, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole again, but I just thought I should just re-clarify that again. It's not that I believe it's a scam. I'm not a fucking lunatic. But I do think that there were things that were done that I think should not have been done, and I think we're done with bad intentions. And if you stick around until the very end of the show, I'm going to tell you who my guest is going to be next week. And I think you guys, if you like this kind of talk, you guys are going to enjoy next week's episode very much. Brilliant news. Sadus are announcing their new album, or their first album in 16 years, The Shadow Inside. It says here, San Francisco Bay Area thrash metal legends Sadus will make their long-awaited return this fall with the release of their first album in 16 years, The Shadow Inside, on November the 17th via Nuclear Blast Records. I've said many times before, I'm a massive fan of Sadus, so very, very much looking forward to hearing the new stuff. It says here, as November approaches, the anticipation for The Shadow Inside is sure to grow. With their uncompromising vision, Sadus continues to stand as a beacon of authenticity and integrity within the heavy metal community, forever forging their path in the ever-evolving landscape of music. They've got 2 tracks here. Let's give, I'm going to just kind of throw a proverbial dart at the screen and say, let's give It's the Sickness a quick listen. Very solid stuff indeed, my friends. Yeah, looking forward to November when that gets released. On that note, my friends, I believe that the time has come to wrap up the news for this week. And so we come to the end of another episode of Into the Necrosphere. Next week, my guest is the great Alan Averill of Primordial, Verminous Serpent, and Red Sovereign, making his return to the podcast. A highly in-demand guest as far as the Legion is concerned. And let me tell you something, if you thought that our first episode was fiery, you ain't seen nothing yet. So that is going to be coming your way next week. In the meantime, I just want to say once again, thank you so much to everybody for the support. I really appreciate all of you more than I can ever put into words. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. Whatever it is that you are doing, wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy. I spoke about the band that I'm about to play you last week. They're called Call of the Void. This is off their last record, Buried in Light. The song is called The Master. Enjoy it, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next Tuesday.